Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. All right, so happy Uposatha, everybody. And this evening, I'd like to continue looking at something very, very valuable to each of us, and it's the idea of recollection. And we've covered the recollection of the Dhamma, we've covered the recollection of the Sangha. This evening, I thought to cover the recollection of the Buddha, which, as I said, from our perspective as human beings, it would seem chronologically like the Buddha should come first. And when we chant it, that's certainly how it 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 happens. The Buddha is the teacher. The Buddha is the guide. The Buddha is the originator of the teachings which we learn. Um, but in a greater metaphysical sense, um, the Buddha is a bit of a blip, cosmologically. And the Buddha is just one of many. So the Dhamma is always there, and the Buddha arises. And the spectacular thing about a Buddha is that the Buddha can discern the Dhamma. And then there are multiple kinds of Buddhas. There's the Arahant, who is an enlightened being who attains full enlightenment based on the teaching of a Buddha. And then there is what we call the Pacceka Buddha, the Pacha Eka, which means only one Buddha. And this is a Buddha who is able to discern the Dhamma without external help. They're able to discern it for themselves. However, they don't have the capability, either the merit or the faculties to be able to teach it and be able to guide others. And then we have what's called a Sammasambuddha, which is a fully self-enlightened Buddha. And this is what our Buddha, the Buddha, is referring to, this special event where a being decides to do the requisite work to become a bridge for other beings, to help other beings across. And it's not an easy thing. And they build up all of the faculties necessary to be able to teach and guide others. And it's based on that event of the arising of the Buddha that the Sangha comes into being, the Sangha being a community of practitioners practicing that Buddha's Dhamma. The thing is, the Sangha that arises around the Buddha tends to last a lot longer than the Buddha themselves. Now, in some cases, the Sangha of a Buddha is quite short-lived after that Buddha passes away. And in other times, the Sangha persists for many centuries or millennia after the Buddha passes away. And the Buddha says that even after the teachings themselves, the Dhamma teachings, have been forgotten, still, as long as people practice in accord with that Dhamma, there will not cease to be enlightened beings in the world. And so when the Buddha gave the Dhammacakka Sutta, the Dhammacakka means the wheel of Dhamma. It said that he started turning a wheel that could not be stopped by any Brahma, Mara, or Deva, uh, any force in the universe. And it's just that once the Buddha teaches and guides somebody to realization, begins the notion in the universe that one can practice and attain enlightenment, that it sets in motion this lifespan of the Sangha, which can't be stopped because as long as people suffer, they will want to find a way out of suffering. And as long as they have the faith and wisdom to practice in the right way, they will get out. They will get out of suffering. Yeah. Um, so how do we recollect the Buddha? And what is it to recollect the Buddha? It's a it's something that the Buddha encouraged for all disciples, not just lay disciples, but monastics, and everyone can benefit from recollecting the Buddhas. And the interesting thing is, the Buddha gave this instruction. You can recollect the Buddha to people who knew him. He was a human being. He was a living human being. And some people are like, oh, you want me to remember you? That makes sense when I'm gone and you're not here. And then, as we were saying with the recollections, that's what the Buddha gave to Mahanama, the Sakyan king, who was quite disturbed when he found out the Buddha would be leaving. He's like, I've had you, down the street. I could ask you for teachings, and you could help steady me whenever I got upset, but now you're going to be gone. And the Buddha said, well, you can recollect me. And should not be much of an epiphany, but it's like, yes, even though I will be gone, the teachings that I gave you will not be gone. The inspiration that I gave you will not be gone. You just have to bring it to mind, Vahanama. And the Buddha points out that this will have tangible benefits. And this is what it says in Anguttara Nikaya, the Numbered Discourses, book of chapter of 11, Sutta 11. Firstly, Mahanama, you should recollect the Blessed One. That Blessed One is perfected, a fully enlightened Buddha, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, holy, knower of the worlds, supreme guide for those fit for training, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, blessed. And if you haven't done the chanting in both Pali and English, now that is the chant that we do, the nine qualities of the Buddha, the nine epithets of the Buddha that we chant. But he goes on, when a noble disciple recollects the Blessed One, their mind is not full of greed, hatred, or delusion. At that time, their mind is quite unswerving, based on the Blessed One. A noble disciple whose mind is unswerving finds inspiration in the meaning and the teaching, finds joy connected with the teaching. When they're joyful, rapture springs up. When their mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, they feel bliss. When they feel bliss, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. This is called a noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced and lives untroubled among people who are untroubled. They've entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the Buddha. Yes, this is when we recollect the Buddha in whatever form we do it, we're recollecting somebody who had sila. Yeah, we're recollecting somebody who had samadhi, who was calm and composed. And we're recollecting somebody who had wisdom. This is the person who gave us the Dhamma teachings. This is the person who guided his immediate disciples to enlightenment, but established such a well-expounded teaching that they were able to continue teaching others long after he passed away. And that's continued now for 2,600 years, longer than any other institution in human history. Yeah. It's a fantastic thing. So the sila, samadhi, and panya of the Buddha is something we can recollect. And in recollecting it, we're recollecting that it is possible for a being to have that. And we're also, in bringing it to mind, we're grasping it ourselves. Yeah. We're recollecting the very qualities that we want to cultivate, the qualities that the teachings are pointing us towards. Yeah. There's it's not simply that we abstract the sila, samadhi, and panya, though. It does help to have aspects of the Buddha that we can use as an anchor for our mind when we recollect the Buddha. The most obvious recollection that we have is one that is, I mean, is all over the place. Yeah, we make physical representations of the Buddha rupas. And this is meant to, even when we're not trying to, even when we're not struggling with this intense mental effort of like thinking about something intentionally, well, still we can have it in our environment. It's an amazing how even just a statue can convey sila, samadhi, and panya even, just sitting there. Yeah, this is a depiction of a human being, and it might not look at it. I was joking with the Indonesian community that comes here on Sundays that this is not a human being. He doesn't have a collarbone or an Adam's apple. His head is on fire. And he hasn't moved a centimeter in the entire time he's been there, unlike all of us who can sit for about 45 minutes and then we start to squirm quite noticeably, right? Um, but it's the artist's rendition of a human being, and that's it's very nice to recollect. The reason that all of the Buddha statues, it's not mass produced. It's not just one statue. There are thousands, millions of different forms that Buddha statues take. The reason for this is because it's really the artist's attempt at portraying this being. Yeah, and there are guidelines, but there are not rules. Yeah. So if I were to do it, I would take some time to get the anatomy right. But for many artists, that's not a big deal. They're trying to convey shiny and calm. Yeah, most of the Buddha Rupas are smiling. Most of them have their eyes, the lids are half closed. This is not somebody who is in any form of distress, but somebody who is at peace. And somebody whose body is upright, has good posture, and yeah, and all of these things are meant to convey ideas. Yeah. And it's interesting how even people who know nothing about the Buddha or the Buddha's teachings get those ideas on seeing the Buddha Rupa, right? This is why so many people have taken the time to gather up these statues and put them in their gardens. Yeah. Why? Because they tend to think of their gardens as peaceful places. And somehow these statues make their gardens more peaceful. It's an odd thing, but it works. Yeah. But when the Buddha talks about the recollection of the Buddha, he actually, for the most part, wasn't referring to the recollection of the physical Buddha. Yeah. Though there's still an aspect of that, and that does help us. Yeah. Because for Mahanama, it definitely would have been extremely valuable to recollect. It's like there is a Buddha in the world somewhere out there. I know him. I grew up with him. Yeah, he's a real person. And for us now, 2,600 years later, we can be presented with a lot of these ideas that are, kind of religious in nature. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to do this. This is the right thing to do. But in recollecting, this was a human being. This person really existed. Yeah, it can anchor us with this realization that this is not an abstract concept. This was not a deity that we are worshiping. This was somebody who did the work. Yeah, and that means that the work can be done. Yeah, I personally find a lot of inspiration in recollecting the Buddha as a human being. Many of the epithets which we use for the Buddha refer to his ability to teach. And for me, the best teacher is going to be a flesh and blood human being who's like mastered a skill and who sits down and takes the time to instruct somebody in how to do it, shows them how to do it, explains how to do it, works them through their misunderstandings until they get it. And then when they get it, lets them go and practice their craft. Yeah, it just sets them free. And the Buddha said there's two kinds of miracles in the world. And interesting, the Buddha was the master of both. The first kind of miracle is, the psychic powers, that we think of as divine miracles, or somebody floats in the air or makes copies of themselves or walks on water or passes through walls. Yeah. That's one kind of miracle. So the other kind of miracle is that human beings can be taught. That one person can instruct another and that they can understand and grasp the concept. Yeah. He said this is the more precious of the two miracles. Yeah. And I find a lot of inspiration in that. Yeah. To me, the Buddha was a man who lived in India, but he represents something that I myself have been inspired by, and that is my own teachers in the modern day who I have met, and I have seen them over time. And I have discerned in them sila, samadhi, and panya. And that was inspiring for me. And when I had questions, I went to them and they were able to see where I was caught up and kind of talk me through it, using their wisdom and their faculties until I arrived at inspiration. And I know how it works because I've seen it work in my own life, that once I got it, there was this eureka moment. It's like, oh, thank you, Ajahn. Oh, that's such a good explanation. Oh, it's a, and then what do I do? I don't, I don't worship the teacher and stay with them for the rest of my life. I don't live with any of my greatest teachers who inspired me. I got up and I said, I get it. And I walked off. Right? That's an amazing, it's a miracle. I got it. So such that I didn't need the teacher anymore. And this is what the human Buddha, the physical representation of the Buddha, can inspire in us. Yeah, there was a teacher, but the Buddha also made it quite clear that just the form of the Buddha is not really the essence of this recollection. Yeah, it's not the essence of what the Buddha represents. Because when people applauded the Buddha and they said, "Wow, you're so good looking, and you're such good posture, and you're such a good complexion." It's like it's just really inspiring to see. And he's like, "This is just a body," because he knew all too well its aches and pains and shortcomings. He couldn't gloss it over and imagine that it's just the perfect divine body. He knew it'd eat and it would defecate, and he had been sick. Yeah. But he said, if you want to see the Buddha, then see the Dhamma. Yeah. And so he would always direct people to point themselves towards the teachings, point themselves towards the principles expressed in the Dhamma, the truths which the Dhamma points to. Yeah. And he said, when you see the Dhamma, then you see the Buddha. Yeah. Because all of the principles of truth, which we are guided to see, all of these kind of are the conditioning principles which causes a Buddha to arise. Yeah, the Buddha doesn't arise just because one guy had a good idea, though it is um, yeah, a guy had a good idea and he had a tremendous follow through to make it happen. Yeah. But at the same time, what is it that causes somebody to seek to be a Buddha? Well, it's suffering. Yeah. As the Four Noble Truths point to it, there is suffering in the world. And it's because of this very suffering that people seek a way out of suffering. Mhm. But not just individual suffering, because, yeah, we suffer and we seek a way out of suffering. But from time to time, there is somebody who perceives other people are suffering as well, just the same as me. And they make an aspiration to not just be enlightened for their own sake, but to be enlightened to help others in their suffering. Yeah. There's an incredible act of deciding to be a bridge. And this was It's funny. I say it's a principle of the Dhamma because there are these stories we find. And some could say this is hagiography. This is just building up mythos and legends that are easy to talk about. They help stretch out the time of a long Dhamma talk, yeah, and keep people awake. All of these nice stories that we got. But over time and thinking about these stories, many of them seem quite inevitable to me. The way that they play out. You see, there's a certain poetry to them. And this is why I really love the Jatakas and the Buddha's stories, because they have these principles in them which ring true to the nature of the Dhamma. Yeah. And when I said the Buddha had determined to make himself a bridge, the actual story we have of his setting the determination to be a Buddha was a physical representation of that. It's said that many eons ago, a very, very long time ago, far beyond the Buddha even bothered to recollect when he sat under the Bodhi tree the night he attained enlightenment. Even further back than that, there was this city called Amravati, which is a bit of a joke because Amravati means the deathless city. Yeah, and not a single mote of dust of that city still remains. It was not deathless. It very much crumbled and disappeared. Yeah. But at the time, it was so long-lived and so big and so foundational that, people thought it was an eternal city. And in this eternal city, there arose the Buddha Dipankara. But far, outside the city's outskirts, there was an ascetic named Sumedha. And Sumedha was fully accomplished, fully attained in the meditations. Yeah, his mind was purified. He didn't have any greed, hatred, and delusion in it at the moment, from practicing the jhanas. But he was not a Buddhist. He was not a disciple of the Buddha. In fact, he had never really encountered the Buddha's teaching. But he had, through chance, arrived on the path that the Buddha, Dipankara, and the Sangha would be traveling one day. And he saw that all the village people were busily cleaning up the path so that the Buddha and the Sangha could come through unobstructed. And they were doing this out of faith, and he could see the joy in their faces, and he could see how these people who were sometimes troubled by the weight of the world were in this moment not troubled. And maybe it clicked for him that, in doing this act of service for the Buddha and the Sangha, they were relieved from some of their worldly suffering. Yeah, it was inspiring them. They were happy to do it. And so he got inspired. And he said, hey, can I borrow a broom? I'll help too. And they said, okay, look, what we're doing is we're all taking charge of a section of the path and cleaning up the best we can. And the Sangha will be here soon. The Buddha will be here soon. So you can take this one section and get to work. And as it so happened, the section that Sumedha was assigned had a little bit of a creek running through it because it had rained recently. And it was just wide enough of water and mud that you couldn't easily, just hop over. And he got everything else clean, but he didn't know what to do with it. There just wasn't enough time. And he didn't have a shovel to kind of like fill it in and pat it down so that the Sangha wouldn't, have to slog through the mud. And he saw the Buddha Dipankara coming. And seeing them, he felt some of that inspiration that the lay people felt. And he threw himself down bodily over the creek, thinking, I will make myself a bridge and they can walk across me. Yeah. And as it so happens, the Buddha Dipankara, because I guess weird things like this happen during the lifespan of a Buddha, people throwing themselves down to become bridges or, offering up the thatching of their houses, to make a seat for the Buddha, even and all of these funny things that they do out of faith and devotion. And the Buddha Dipankara walked across Sumedha, and as he did, Sumedha looked up and Satipankara, and he's like, it occurred to him that this was something that he could do. He saw the Buddha Dipankara and he thought, I've fully mastered meditation. And if I were to apply myself to the teaching of this Buddha, I could attain enlightenment as he has this very night if I set my mind to it. But he said, for one such as me, I could do more. Yeah, I could do as he has done. Yeah, and he saw the Sangha, this long line of people stretching back to the horizon. And he said, I could become a fully enlightened Buddha as he had. And I can become a bridge for others to cross over the chasm of suffering and get to the safety of enlightenment. Yeah. And there's something that Buddhas can do through, I don't know, Buddha karma, that they can discern this determination and they can know whether or not it will succeed. Because I imagine it's not that uncommon for people to see a Buddha, and if they have some measure of delusion in their mind, to think, I could do that. And for the most part, the Buddha would be able to discern, no, they can't. They might try. They might try for a while, but they will eventually lose steam and fall off and start suffering, and yeah, they'll give up. But from time to time, somebody makes a determination with a pure mind, and the Buddha can discern they will eventually succeed. And so the Buddha Dipankara looked down and said, in the far future, this ascetic will be a Buddha named Gautama, and he will become a bridge for others to cross over. He will become a fully enlightened Buddha and have a great Sangha arise under him. And that was the beginning of the story of our Buddha Gautama. Yeah. And for me, it's like it all kind of plays out in that way where you see it's not simply that he was a teacher, but that he knew how to set the mind to work. Yeah. He knew essential principles of how to commit oneself. Yeah. So is not a small amount of sila, samadhi, and panya that a Buddha is able to display in order to help others attain enlightenment. Yeah. Because it said there are two versions of this story, and it's something that the ancient Indians really loved to do was to have everybody die at the end of their stories. Yeah. And so the one version of the story is that as hundreds and thousands of monks are walking across Sumedha, they eventually crush him and he dies very meritoriously, but they squash him flat. And he's eventually reborn and then sets off to become a Buddha. But in the other version of the story, Sumedha survives his ordeal and goes back to his hut. And he sits down that night and he thinks, okay, so how could I be a Buddha? Like, how am I going to do this? And he can discern an essential principle of being a being in samsara. And there's something that we do, something actually very wholesome and necessary that we do when we die and are reborn, and that is we let go of the past. If we were to cling to our previous existence, we would suffer. We would suffer and we would never be able to get it back. The time only moves in one direction. Yeah. So when we die and we are reborn, we might, in certain circumstances, have some flickering memories of our previous existence, but we will pretty quickly let them go in order to fully embody whatever rebirth we have taken. Yeah. And this is a natural thing that we do. So each and every one of us, we might have known that rebirth was a thing. We might have known what existence we had previously when we were born, but pretty quickly we got used to being us. Yeah. And those memories faded. And whatever things were really important to us in our last existence, we got over it because we have a new one with different paradigms and different things that excite us. Yeah. And so this being a natural thing that we do, how can you set a determination in order to become a fully enlightened Buddha, knowing how long it's going to take and what perfections of character you're going to need? How can you possibly set the determination to do it and carry through? Yeah. But the Buddha, instead of, just simply like, well, I'm going to be a Buddha, I'm going to be big and shiny and golden and everybody's going to respect me. He said, I need perfections of character if I am going to help others. Yeah. And so he sat down and he thought of all of the qualities that he would need in order to be a Buddha. He reflected on those qualities to the point that what arose in him was a strong determination to perfect each and every one of these qualities. And that became the core of his determination, was not simply to be a Buddha, but to have perfected his character so that when he did attain enlightenment, he would have everything he needed to be able to teach and to guide others. Because at that time, he couldn't pick what future existence he would be in, you know. He could only know what qualities he wanted to have when he got there. And that's what he focused on. And so it said that our Buddha, it took him 100,000 eons, and in this case, eon means the entire lifespan of a universe, from Big Bang to contraction, or however the universe is eventually destroyed. 100,000 of those, and then four periods of time that were so vast and so confusing that it's impossible to estimate how long it took. So four eternities and 100,000 universes. That's how long it took to perfect all of the qualities of character that he needed. Yeah. And a lot of great stories came out of it. And that's what the Jatakas kind of talk about. Yeah. But we also have other books of the canon. One is called the Buddha Vamsa, I think. And this is talking about um, the nature of various Buddhas. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, some of the parts of the stories overlap. Yeah, you can see, when a Buddha finally arrives at their destination, they look a certain way. And so once you start to see that, you can be like, oh, okay, this is not random. Yeah. If you perfect your character, if you go through all these processes, you end up at a certain destination. Yeah, whether or not you intended it looks a certain way. But another is the Charya Pitaka, and this one is specifically all of the little stories of our Buddha Gautama, like perfecting the 10 paramis, the 10 perfections of character, which we've gone over them before. Yeah, dare I try to enumerate them all? Well, we have metta, upekkha, we have prajna, sila, and virya. Then we have satya, adhitthana, um, yeah, dana, uh, nekama, and I feel pretty good getting nine because by the time you get that far, you don't know where you started. Some traditions have an order, but yeah, I'm happy with that. But basically, all of these great qualities and characters, which I encourage you to look at, yeah, these aspects of an enlightened being. And each one of these little stories shows that along the way, the Buddha Gautama was not yet a perfect being. He stumbled, yeah. He made mistakes. He said he broke every single precept except he never told an intentional lie. Yeah, such was the determination he made to be a Buddha, and his determination to stick to that and to not ever deceive. anyone that he kept to that, but he broke all the other precepts all the time. Yeah, but he eventually made his way in his final life to somebody who had all of these great qualities. Yeah. And so when we recollect the Buddha, we can think there is a person, but we can also think there are these qualities. There is the quality of metta. Yeah. And this is one way that we can do the recollection of the Buddha. And in thinking of metta, we can think the Buddha had metta. The Buddha had incredible goodwill, to all of the people he met. And he didn't get angry at him. He didn't push him aside. He was friendly and nurturing. And when he gave criticism, he tried to give constructive criticism. Yeah, such that when he gave discourses on how to give feedback when you're admonishing somebody, he said, if you can tell that you don't have metta in your mind, if you're not speaking out of benefit, then maybe don't speak. Maybe wait, yeah, until you do. Yeah, he saw it so essential. Yeah, to giving constructive feedback. Make sure that you have metta in your mind when you do it. He had incredible compassion, incredible wisdom, incredible equanimity. Yeah, he had mastered sila such that, and this is a quality of a teacher, yeah, such that when he arose in the final life where he would attain enlightenment, everybody was pretty impressed with him already, just his basic stature and his intelligence and his human accomplishments, yeah. But that wasn't enough for him. He went out and he attained enlightenment and he came back. But then he found, quite hilariously, it wasn't enough to just tell people, I'm fully enlightened. I can lead you to full enlightenment. Just do what I say. It turned out to be extraordinarily difficult to get them to believe him for some reason. Yeah. But eventually he was able to succeed. Yeah. And that alone represents how easy would it be for you to convince another person that you're fully enlightened? Just think about that. Have you ever told a lie in your life? Have you ever said something that turned out to be inaccurate? Yeah. Have you ever misled somebody for one reason or another? If you have, then somebody hearing you speak to them would have a legitimate reason to distrust you, even a tiny degree, right? So the Buddha knew in order to be an effective teacher, in order for anybody to listen to him, they had to respect him. Yeah, and so he had all of this parami built up in order that people would respect him. They would listen to him. That he would be able to make sense when he talked. Yeah, and yeah, all of these incredible qualities are part of this recollection. And I think, yeah, most importantly, there is one thing I reflected on very recently about the nature of the chanting that we do, which I think hints at a profound respect for the nature of truth and how we go about being an advocate of truth. Uh, so when we recollect the Dhamma, what do we say? We say the Dhamma is well expounded, it's apparent here and now, timeless, encourages investigation. These are things that we can verify for ourselves, right? When we study the Dhamma, we can discern, oh, this is well explained. This is talking about something right here, right now that I can verify. When we recollect the Sangha, we say the Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples has practiced well, practiced directly, insightfully, with integrity. Yeah. And we may or may not be able to discern that they are some level of enlightened being, but we can, if we see somebody who has a level of sila, who has a level of metta, who has a level of equanimity, who has a level of compassion, we know it didn't arise in a vacuum. we see that there's somebody who trains, who practices, who tries to develop those qualities, then we know that they have those qualities because they have nurtured them. Yeah, they have done the practice. And we can see this for ourselves. But when we chant the recollection of the Buddha, it starts with something that the other two recollections don't. It starts itipiso. And this in Pali, this small phrase means it is said. Yeah, and I think it's amazing that such is the respect for truth and what it means to speak and represent truth. That even when we recollect the Buddha, we're not doing it dogmatically. We're not saying, "Hey, the Buddha was fully enlightened. He was the best. He was the best teacher of men and devas." Because in our current day, and this was true even for people who lived at the time that the Buddha was alive, many of them were ordained and attained enlightenment having never met the Buddha. Yeah. They were just ordained into the Sangha as it spread through India. But now, 2,600 years later, we have not met that Buddha. So when we chant the recollection of the Buddha, we say itipi so, because some of this is still hearsay. Some of this is still what we've been told. We've been told the Buddha was accomplished. We've been told the Buddha was a fantastic teacher. We've been told the Buddha was blessed and awakened. But we have to acknowledge that we haven't met him. Yeah. And so I think it's very valid and very appropriate that as each artist creates a unique Buddha Rupa representing their understanding of this individual and their inspiration and recollection of the Buddha, each one of us has within us an idea of the Buddha. And each one of our ideas of the Buddha is unique. So I say, as you do a recollection of the Buddha, focus on any of the things that I've talked about tonight, which actually work for you, actually inspire you. Now, you don't have to do it the same way that anybody else does it. You know, those qualities, those paramis, which really mean a lot to you and are something that you want in yourself, you want to cultivate, and you feel inspired to cultivate. Well, those are fantastic foundations for recollecting the Buddha. Yeah, because you can recollect there was somebody who had these. Yeah. And I know this because in the modern day, after hundreds, even thousands of years of playing the human civilization telephone game, you know, where we try to pass on the Buddha's teachings on and on and on from generation to generation, we still value these paramis. Yeah. We still get told that these are worthwhile mental states to cultivate. Yeah? So you can say, I have heard that the Buddha spoke in praise of these qualities. Yeah. And therefore I am developing faith that he had these qualities. He valued these qualities. He wanted us to be able to develop these qualities. Yeah. And that can be the basis for us forming our own impression of who the Buddha was. And for each of us, this might be a different Buddha, but what's important is what the Buddha talked about when he gave the recollection to Mahanama. Yeah, one who recollects the Buddha, at that time, their mind is not full of greed, not full of hatred, not full of delusion. This is the metric that we should use. Recollecting the Buddha, does it give us the opportunity to set down some of the dukkha that is weighing on us, and some of the causes of dukkha that is weighing on us? And if so, it is valuable, and as we're cultivating that which the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate. Yeah. Right. So with that, I offer these thoughts on this post-event evening. I hope it can be of some use to you. If nothing else, you can consider that you just did the recollection of the Buddha for 45 minutes, and then you're good. Yeah, yeah, you did it vicariously. But maybe it's given you some ideas, and some future meditation. You can sit down and you can actually direct your mind to the Buddha. I usually get a front row seat, you know, when we sit in a meditation hall. I'm usually quite close to the Buddha statue. So I get to do a lot of recollection of the Buddha. He's usually right there. But if you have a statue of the Buddha, I encourage you sometime to sit with it nearby, or a picture of the Buddha. Yeah. And if it brings joy to your mind, then bring this recollection to mind. I think it will be for your long-lasting benefit and help you grow in faith and wisdom. Yeah. All right. That's for your reflection.